What started off as a season of misery ends in a season of infamy. Give it up for your 2023 World Champions, Evo Geniuses!
So today I wanted to talk about why EG won champs, and it's probably not the thing that you're expecting me to talk about today. But to start off, we need to remember that EG weren't always that good, right? Whilst we think of them now as the team that won champs and are a very good team, at the start of the year, that was not the case, and EG were commonly playing rounds like this one.
Two shares at the long range for the retake.
Oh,
Find it for long.
It started as a 5v4 last time too. Post-plant position fully set up.
Okay, so Busio, here's the flash coming in from the flank. Here's a lot of footsteps now. And trying to bait the smoke behind him so he can play towards the front, and he gets pinned in the end. Weapon now dropped. Salvage here, it's a phantom in the hands of Jake. Trying to get a push out. A shot long range does not work out for BCG. This is not looking good at all. It's a Jordy, it's come by himself.
Standing ahead.
Weapons are all down. Spike looking to be defused at halfway. A flank, the flick, but it's still.
Do it again!
Another 50 from C9.
And so from going from where they were at the start of the season to obviously where they are now, there's been a massive, massive improvement. But how did EG improve so much comparatively to everyone else? Well, a lot of you, of course, will know the roster change and bringing in Demon 1. And of course, that did have a massive impact. But that alone was not enough to take those players from where they were to winning champs. Because I think the main reason of why EG won champs, considering where they started from at the start of this year, was the fact that they had a 10-man roster. Now, when EG announced their 10-man roster, there was a lot of dismissive people from both inside and outside of the scene. And Potter herself has even talked about some of the struggles that having a 10-man roster brings.
It's been a lot of delegating, a lot of conflict of interest as well for me in my position, surprisingly, trying to manage getting the best out of the 5 main players, plus having a reserve roster that's kind of foaming at the mouth, wanting that position as well, and trying to develop the reserve roster, allow them to see the gameplay of our main team. So there's a lot of juggling to keep everyone happy.
But now I'm going to prove to you that having a 10-man roster is very beneficial. And we're going to start off with this, a coaching cycle model. Now, little background here, I did a master's degree in football coaching and analysis, so this kind of whole thing about coaching is like buried into my mind, right? And this kind of thing specifically, but this is just one of many coaching models, but they're all relatively similar. You choose a goal. For Valorant, it could be get better at retakes. You collect your baseline data. Are we good at retakes? You teaching practice and feedback. You work on your retakes, you evaluate, did you get better? And then you reflect on the whole process. You know, what could we have done better? How can the system be improved, right? What worked, what didn't work, all of that stuff. And this is a fairly common thing. But the thing that I really want to focus on is the teaching practice and feedback, because this is where having that 10-man roster really comes in clutch. And here is just the basic rundown of what a coaching session would look like. This one is applied to football, but honestly, you could apply this to anything and esports as well, as we'll get into, right? So it starts with a warm-up. You then do, basically, this is drills. You then do, this is a structured small-sided game, and then a free play match. And if we did this in terms of Valorant terms, and in terms of, you know, what most Valorant teams are doing, let's see how that would go, right? So they'll start probably with a warm-up, right? You'll probably do either a deathmatch, or you could even include in this, like, you know, a custom server where it's just the 5 of you practicing, like, lineups and timings for an exec, right? Let's include that in terms of warm-up stuff, because, you know, there's no opposition. You can't really get it wrong necessarily, other than, you know, just changing timing slightly. So let's call that a warm-up. And then most teams will go from this warm-up and they'll go straight to free play match and just let's start scrimming, in we go, right? And they'll just miss out on this middle part, right? And that's a big deal, because this middle part is where the learning takes place, right? Or where most of the learning takes place. Now, I'm not saying that you can't learn anything by doing scrims. Of course you can. And you will get better at the game if you just scrim, right? Playing the game, you will get better at the game, right? That's just how it's going to work. The problem with doing that kind of thing, though, is there is going to be so many mistakes. There's going to be so many issues that arise during a full game that it's going to be so hard to focus on one thing, right? Unless you have glaringly obvious weaknesses, then it's going to be very, very difficult to pick out the problems or pick out any themes from just a full scrim, because each round is going to be different. There's going to be different problems in each part of the round, and it's going to be so hard to unpick. And that's the thing. A lot of pro Valorant games are decided by those small little mistakes, right, in each round. But those are the small little mistakes that it's very difficult to fix when you are just doing warm-up into straight scrimming, because those small little problems happen all the time. It's very hard to unpick them all at once. And this is the advantage that EG have, is that they can do this, right? They can work on these kind of things with a 10-man roster in their own like custom 10-mans that they can do in their, you know, primary team versus their secondary team. They can work on this kind of stuff. And if you don't believe me, then don't worry, because Potter and Boostio have my back.
You know, there was a lot of gaps for us at Champs. So having the tool, having the reserve roster has been really beneficial for us this year.
So when you say you're doing drills, is that like main roster against reserve roster drilling, retakes, drilling like a certain strat, doing stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things for this squad in particular from the beginning of the year was working on our confidence and our ego. So for me, we made the team get rushed on like 100 times. The same site, the same strat, and you know, the players go crazy. How boring is that? But for me, I needed them to be able to react the same way and see the pattern, see the vision. And so being able to do that, being really redundant in those kinds of things has been awesome, you know. And you're not going to find a scrim partner that's going to be willing to do those things.
Absolutely not.
So yeah, having the reserve roster has been awesome in that regard.
Can I hear it from your perspective as well, though? Because, you know, Potter's saying it drives the players mad a little bit. You've appreciated the long-term vision at this point?
Absolutely. I mean, we're winning, so who cares how boring it is during like the hard parts?
Right.
It's fun winning, but definitely there's been some times where it's just like I'm playing C and then the reserve team will just hit on my side like 15 times in a row and you just do it over and over again.
But there's another major benefit that EG have over other Valorant teams as well, and that is feedback. Feedback is an integral part of successful executive coaching and development. This kind of sentence of the importance of feedback, and you'll see it in sports, esports, the corporate executive ladder, it's all there. Everyone always talks about feedback and it gets very boring, but feedback is very important. But the thing is, EG have a massive advantage in their feedback as well, because not only can they feedback amongst themselves about what worked and what didn't, when they're playing against their second team, they can get the opposition's feedback as well to what they were doing, right? And again, this is not going to happen for any other team, right? What other team is going to waste their own time giving you their feedback of what they thought to help you? Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. But for EG, they can learn what the opposition thinks of what they're doing, right? Did it have an impact on them? Were they, you know, in a lot of trouble? Or did their util potentially miss them and they need to, you know, work on a different lineup or whatever to fix that, right? Those kind of things EG can get. And there is a lot of random things that happen in Valorant. You can still get a kill whilst you're fully flashed or fully stunned. Or, you know, you can rotate. You know, maybe you rotate just off a hunch, right? But maybe you rotated off a flash. But you wouldn't know unless you're EG, right? Another team isn't going to have that information. They could maybe take a guess, but again, without a full VOD reviewer and without the actual information from the other team, you'll never truly know. But EG can have a much clearer understanding of what works for them and what doesn't. And so hopefully between those couple of things, you can see the benefits of having a 10-man roster. I mean, from just a purely coaching perspective, taking Valorant out of it, EG's approach is the only one that makes sense. Every other team's approach to this doesn't make any sense from a coaching perspective and actually helping their players in the most efficient ways of getting better at the game. But just before we finish, there is one small little benefit as well of having a 10-man roster, and that is maybe one of those extra players that you sign just so happens to be this guy.
We're drawn out, but they do not suspect it whatsoever. Puzzle find Boostio, but the shutdown is there. Demon 1 with 2, drops the smoke. The spike now stranded in arcade. What a cascade of tragedies here for DRX. Smoke again coming down, but he spots the raise before the bloom. Swings on the corner, and he's on for the ace. Zest lingering above, he spotted it, he's got it! 6-1 off the back of the ace, Demon 1 shuts it down!